Now we're going to talk about stacking function machines. So let's assume we have the first function, which is f of x equals 2x minus 1. And we have another function, which is 3 f of x equals 3x plus 1. So let's assume that my initial input is negative 2. What would be my final output? So we would put negative 2 in, work it out, get a number, and then that number would automatically go back into the second machine, work out, and get a different output. So let's see what happens. My two functions in order, my initial input is negative 2. So I'm going to put it into the first function. So I'm going to take this and replace it into every x I see. So f of negative 2 equals 2 times negative 2 minus 1. F of negative 2 equals negative 4 minus 1. F of negative 2 equals negative 5. I'm going to take the negative 5 and input it into the second function machine, which was f of x equals 3x plus 1. So we're going to say f of negative 5 equals 3 negative 5 plus 1. F, you just keep bringing this down, of negative 5 equals 3 negative 4. F of negative 5 equals negative 12. So my initial input is negative 2. When I input it into the first machine, I end up with an output of negative 5. This output then becomes the new input of the second machine. And the final output, after working both machines, would be negative 12. Again, my initial input is negative 2. I plug it in, I work it out, and I end up with negative 5. I take the negative 5 and I'm going to input it into the second machine. And my final output was negative 12. Okay? Now what happens, or how would I organize these functions if my initial input is 0, initial input is 0, and final output would be 5. What would be the order of the machines? Okay, let's see. I'm going to erase this. How would I organize these machines where my initial input is 0 and my final output would be, let me erase this, my final output would be 5. How would I organize? So let's start with the top one. If my initial is, or let's start, well, doesn't matter. Let's start with 0. I have to end up with, here at the bottom, that's what they're asking me, with a 5. Well, we want to know the initial input is 0. We work it out. we end up with an output, then that output then becomes the new input, and I have to end up with a 5. Would this be the order that I can put them in? Well, now let's do the math. The initial input is 0. The first function machine is f of x equals 3x plus 1. The initial input is 0. F of 0 equals 3, 0 plus 1. F of 0 equals 3 times 1. 3 times 1 is 3. This is my initial input, and this is an output. Initial input. Now I'm going to take this output and plug it into the second function machine, which is f of x equals 2x minus 1. F of 3 equals 2 times 3 minus 1. F of 3 equals 6 minus 1. F of 3 equals 5. So the initial input is 0. They have to be in this order. First this machine, and then this one.